Week 5 of the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate. I am Matt Barrie. Welcome in to the week we've been waiting for. We've been teased throughout the season of marquee weeks of college football. And I get it. Some of the matchups are good. Most of them are not. And then week 5 happened. And we had a span of time, we'll get into in a moment, last night, where we had some classics develop within a minute of each other. And not only were the night games great, the early action was just as exciting. And that's where we begin with our Allstate Good Hands play. And it's Tennessee on the road needing Deshaun Bishop in overtime to give the Volunteers a come-from-behind victory against Mississippi State. Now, I'll say this. If Mississippi State is going to play like this against everyone, you're going to have a hard time finding a bottom team in the SEC because people thought that'd be Mississippi State. They beat Arizona State, a ranked team earlier in the season. It looked as if for a while they were going to get Tennessee, but the Volunteers, huge win on the road against Mississippi State, our Allstate Good Hands play. As we do each and every Sunday, we bring in Paul Finebaum to recap the Saturday. Like I said, we've been waiting for Paul, and a lot of times we hype these things up and they never live up to the hype. That was not the case yesterday.
No, it was spectacular, and really, Matt, the early games were revealing from the very beginning. I think starting with Notre Dame and Arkansas, we saw the end of Sam Pittman. And if he's back after that, then Arkansas fans are probably going to be in revolt. And it just kept working through overtime games as you were working your way through the afternoon. But the evening was spectacular with the two biggest games of the day, and one was not quite as dramatic, but it was equally as tense, and the other one in double overtime lived up.
We knew, look, every once in a while you get a teaser. You get something that happens throughout the weekend or the day. You're like, oh, this is going to be a weird day. For me, I think that happened on Friday night when Florida State got beat by Virginia, and you're like, oh, okay, here we go. And then in the nightcap, Arizona State down 17-0 comes back and beat TCU. So it was a precursor to everything we saw on Saturday because there's always that one weekend or day where you're like, okay, college football is going to be thrown in its axis. And that's what we had last night, in that you wondered if it was going to be Penn State's time, and you wondered if Georgia was going to find its way. And I want to start there in Alabama, Georgia, because, Paul, that's where you were for SEC Nation. You know me. I am usually not critical of coaches as much on this show. I try to understand that they're the head coach, they run the program, they've forgotten more football than I'll ever know. But for me, it is inexcusable with where we are in college football right now. It is inexcusable that Kirby Smart did not kick the field goal when he was at Alabama's 8-yard line at the beginning of the fourth quarter. It would have tied the game at 24-all. It's that simple. Tie the game. Get the points. How many points were scored after Georgia and Kirby Smart decided not to kick that field goal? 0. The score stayed the same for the entire fourth quarter. So if people are looking to point fingers this morning, point them at Kirby Smart in that damn analytics book, because you tied the game there in what was going to be a low-scoring game. I find that decision today and last night, Paul, inexcusable.
Yeah, I would agree, and because they had come from behind. I mean, there were so many different moments in the game where Alabama let it get away, and then Georgia did with drop passes. But I'm not sure what you were trying to prove there. It wasn't the critical moment in the game where you had to get that first down. You tie the game and you exhale a little bit, as opposed to being uptight as you really were from the very beginning, because like last year when Georgia couldn't play in the first half, they started doing the same thing. Everyone knows who Kirby Smart is, but what we do know now after the game, Matt, is he's 0-2 against Kalen DeBoer, and that's an ugly look. I defended him yesterday with that pro-Georgia crowd and Jason Aldean and Luke Bryan looking on and saying, hey, you can't blame Kirby. That's a Nick Saban problem. Not anymore. Not anymore. We're talking about a guy who many of us thought was down for the count 4 weeks ago today. And that's a real problem. And you know how fortunate Georgia was to get out of Tennessee. I mean, had they not pulled that game out, their season would already be on the brink. But they still have Texas. They have Ole Miss. They have a lot left to deal with.
I just don't like. Here's how coaches are wired, because you and I are around them for our jobs. They're paranoid. They are so paranoid, and they're always looking for that motivational factor. And they don't want people doing this. They don't want people doing that. Then you get into a game and you're trusting this book, this analytics book that has no human feel. It's a data-based, data-driven metric that says, oh, 4th and 3 and short, go. Well, in that stage of the game, when it's clear your defense is caught up to Ty Simpson in Alabama, and you were getting boat raced early on, you have a guaranteed opportunity for a 25-yard field goal to start the game over at the beginning of the fourth quarter and make it 24-all. When did these coaches who live in paranoia stop doing the human element when it's the best for their team? Like, I was looking around studio with Joey and EJ. I'm like, is he serious? Is wired as Kirby is, how do you not see that that's the right thing to do?
Yeah, and I think to further the argument, you're still not guaranteed of anything with the first down. You're not over the goal line. So I think it was an unnecessary risk, and he is not one that normally would go that route. The biggest argument against what he did is where he was. Georgia last year against Tennessee. You remember that second half comeback that saved their season. That's what they're built around, and you never stop and think, well, what if we don't make it? We just gave up the opportunity because I agree. I mean, I'm not because of the weirdness of where it was in the game. It doesn't come down to it, but the fact that they never crossed the goalpost again or the goal line, confirms your argument.
Yeah, it just made me grumpy yesterday and this morning. I'm grumpy on Sundays anyway because I get no sleep. But I don't. This thing in college football now where this analytics-driven world, and I've said it, and we've talked about it. We used to get on Dan Lanning about this a couple of years ago. I think it was the Ohio State game where he just had no business going for it on 4th down. And we've said it a number of times. It's going to cost you a game. And it did last night. I don't care what anybody says. If you come at me and say, well, that didn't lose in the game, okay, then I would point to you. Where were the other points in the fourth quarter? When did Alabama pull away? They didn't. The margin of score was the same when they elected not to kick the field goal. It was 3. And so, I look, we're going to get to Alabama now, but I don't think if you're Georgia, you wake up today and you're like, that is an inexcusable way to manage that game when you had a whole quarter tied at 24 to try to get back in it. There were a couple times when you're driving, you're not driving tied 24, you're driving down 24-21. You've put extra pressure on yourself because you elected not to get the points. On the other side of this, credit Alabama. Ty Simpson, I thought, was tremendous in the first half. And Paul, what did we say last week when we were previewing this game? And I said it all day in studio yesterday. If Alabama wins this game, gone is the BS from Florida State. The Kalen DeBoer discussion, the kids missing curfew, all the stuff going on at the facility. They needed a month to regroup from that loss. They got the win. And to me, you live in the state, you know much more than I do about the Alabama situation, but I believe you can put all that aside now.
You have to. And Matt, what was so interesting is after ULM and after Wisconsin, everywhere I went, what do you think about Alabama? They look great. And you wanted to say, yes, but now you don't have to say that. I mean, Alabama is a legitimate contender again. They don't have a conference loss. And what was so interesting, Matt, being out Friday night in Athens, how many Georgia fans came up to me as we watched the end of Florida State and go, hey, you think your Alabama team's worth a flip now? And 24 hours later, it had been flipped against that team that they were bragging about and thought. I mean, it almost felt like when Florida State lost that game that Alabama was cooked. Kalen DeBoer is really phenomenal in the sense that, Matt, how many times has this guy come back from the dead? It's just unreal to think that his road record is bad, but he is 2-0 against Kirby Smart, and the bigger number is Kirby Smart's 0-2 against him. Saban doesn't matter anymore. The schedule is still tricky, but I would say overall, Alabama to go into October with one loss, not bad.
No, it's not. And look, the one loss, in the college football playoff era, you can stub your toe non-conference. Hell, you can stub your toe in conference and still find a way. Like, I could go on a whole Matt Barrie Show presented by Allstate rant on how Notre Dame's still going to make the playoff because they are. And they've got 2 losses. But yesterday's game, all the credit to Alabama, all the credit to Ty Simpson. The Ryan Williams drop early, I'm like, uh-oh. But they jammed Miller was back. I mean, they had everything they needed to do. And what was the biggest thing in the Nick Saban era that Alabama was able to do? They were always able to stabilize the waters when things got choppy. In the rare occasion they got choppy under Nick Saban, Kalen DeBoer was able to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think about all the things I was told by insiders after the Florida State game. And Matt, they don't matter anymore, but the defense was terrible. They'll never be able to stop anybody. They looked really good last night. The offense is chaotic. None of that matters now. And it's sometimes you have to listen to what the wind is telling you, and the wind was telling us that Alabama had turned regardless of the competition, and they have. And I know people are going to try to make a lot out of this week. Don't forget they're playing Vanderbilt, but Matt, I'm not too concerned about this Crimson Tide team right now.
No, especially after what happened a year ago against Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt. You wondered if Vanderbilt would overlook Utah State. They did not. Pavia had a career day, earned him the coveted helmet sticker on College Football Final. There's no sneaking up on him this year, and I would agree with you. I think the Vanderbilt surprise attack from a year ago is probably not going to be hanging around when they play this week. I want to stay in the SEC before we move on to Oregon and Penn State, because in that game between LSU and Ole Miss, there was a precursor. There was a lot of precursors to this game, but I'm going to go back 2 weeks ago, I think it was. They all start adding up once you get into this part of the season, when Brian Kelly sniped at a reporter after the Florida game for asking about the offense. Now, I got both sides of it. I got Brian's side in that you just won the game. Let's ask some questions, but we just beat a Florida team in the SEC. I know they're bad, but it's still a win of the conference. But it begged the question, because even in the Clemson game, the offense hadn't been good. So you had a body of work where the offense hadn't been great. And then yesterday against Ole Miss, they had the one touchdown earlier as a tipped pass and a catch. But Paul, the offense is what's getting Brian Kelly and Ole Miss right now. And credit Lane Kiffin, we'll get that side in a minute, but LSU's offense is struggling. It is what it is. Yeah,
the Durham injury hurts too, but overall, it is just it's really tough to watch, and we saw it coming. The Clemson losses and the Florida losses, so 6 total. We're telling you that the first game of the season was fraudulent. And it's the same offense. I mean, the defense was up against a powerful offense yesterday. And even though that game came down to it late, once Ole Miss got rolling in the second quarter, it really never felt that close to me.
Yeah, you never got the sense that LSU was going to put together this long, sustained drive. And I'm just stunned with Garrett Nussmeier coming back. LSU's always going to trot out receivers. You mentioned Cade Durham. He's out. That's the other thing we were talking about. How is it that LSU, you could throw a dart in the perimeter of Baton Rouge and find a 5-star running back? I'm just stunned there isn't one of those vintage LSU running backs on the roster that you can rely on.
Yeah, I think what Brian Kelly did was he loaded up on the defense because he knew he had to have it. I suppose knowing that Durham was there and they had a couple other guys, they felt comfortable. I think they also felt comfortable with what we were told was going to be the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and look what happened.
Where do you assess now LSU moving forward?
Yeah, I think they're in a really tough spot, Matt. I'm thinking through their schedule in my head, and they have to go to Alabama. They have Oklahoma. You may have to help me here, but I'm trying to think who else. I really am. I think they have Texas A&M.
Yeah, let me pull them up for you.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
right now, LSU, they have South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, at Alabama, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, at Oklahoma. And at that point, we believe that John Mateer will be back because that's towards the end of the season. And so they have a bye week going into South Carolina. They host South Carolina at Vandy. Texas A&M, they get it home, and then at Alabama November 8th. Then after that, Arkansas, West Kentucky, Oklahoma. So they have a stretch coming up that's going to define the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly the Alabama game is going to perhaps be their Waterloo. A&M, Oklahoma. It just feels right now like that may be a lot. I mean, the good news for them is that it's only one loss. That's why the Clemson game was so critical. I always looked at that Ole Miss game, though, Matt, as being problematic for them. That was a game last year that they won in overtime. So I'm hesitant to write them off because of what the schedule says. But I would be bullheaded to act like they don't have serious problems offensively. When Durham, I don't know what Durham coming back will help, but he was there early on, didn't help that much.
I would tell you this too. On the other side of it, first of all, we could sit here and make a case for 5 teams to win the SEC. I can't remember the last time you could look and there really wasn't a favorite. But Ole Miss has to be up there with them. Like Lane Kiffin has somehow, has somehow found this quarterback at a Ferris State who has taken the team, given it a dynamic. I don't know that they knew that they had. He should be the Heisman frontrunner right now. Like Ole Miss, with that defense, they're legitimate in this league.
Yeah, no, and that was the one thing I really wasn't sure we would see. Of course, think back to the Ole Miss narrative. Austin Simmons was going to be such a great quarterback, and Chambliss has come in and just turned people upside down. But listen, Lane Kiffin never disappoints. This was a big week for him with the East 60, and he delivered. And beating Lane Kiffin in Oxford has become nearly impossible.
Especially when you beat your daughter's boyfriend. Like that's
yes.
Dad is always going to have the upper hand with the boyfriend. And now, whereas Ole Miss, we kind of like, well, they lost Jackson Dart, they lost some talent to the NFL. What do they have coming in? Right now they have the best story in college football. I'm sure they had Chambliss, and he looks really, really good. And again, you beat LSU. I want to pop up Ole Miss's schedule for a minute because if you look at what they have coming, and you start paving the way, like I thought Ole Miss was the most talented team in the SEC a year ago, and they did not make the playoff. And I thought that was a little bit disappointing based on what they have. But Paul, if you look at their schedule, they have a bye week. Then they go Washington State. Got that. Then they have 2 weeks where they go at Georgia, at Oklahoma. After that, Paul, South Carolina, the Citadel, Florida, Mississippi State.
Yeah. They're in great shape.
That's a schedule that you can path your way to some big things if everyone stays healthy. We touched on Tennessee in the beginning. I think that was a great comeback. And so you look at everything now in the SEC, the conference is legitimately wide open. But the big one last night, Penn State, Oregon. Everyone knows the stat of James Franklin coming in, top 10 matchups while he's at Penn State. They were left 17-3. That thing was 3-3. I think about 10 minutes left in the third quarter. We're like, okay, 1 touchdown wins. Oregon gets up 17-3, done, book them, it's over because Penn State can't move the ball. And then here comes Drew Aller, Penn State. They answer the charge. They come all the way back to tie it, and then it turns into a classic. But big picture now, James Franklin and Penn State, they were built for this season with everyone coming back. But, Paul, they come up short in a big game, and it leaves you wondering. I mean, look, again, playoff. You can lose 1 game. You can maybe lose 2 games and still get in. But this was the moment Penn State could silence all the critics, especially James Franklin, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much emotion in talking about James Franklin anymore, Matt, because it's become so repetitive. And how many times are we going to hear him say, yeah, I mean, this was our chance? I mean, it's unreal. And I think Oregon is a really, really outstanding team, and their quarterback play is elite. But okay, that's pretty much the every year conversation, but you mark the game with the whiteout. This is your moment. And if you're going to be taken seriously, you have to deliver. So I say this with no emotion and with no glee, but it's getting really difficult to take James Franklin seriously anymore as a big time coach, because he does the same thing every time. His team manages under him to blow at the big game. It's a terrible narrative but as he said, it's fact. His path is pretty rough right now because he played Florida International, Nevada, and Villanova. That's his fault. You don't even have to play a great team. You just have to play someone respectable, and we take you seriously. But it's hard to take that program seriously with that preseason.
They had the worst strength of schedule in the country coming in. It was 136 out of 136. And we said it. We're like, hey, man, like, your schedule's brutal. We're going to learn something about you. And that's what we learned. We learned at Penn State. We learned that Drew Aller's got the chest. I mean, a lot of us wondered if he had that. He has it. But we learned that Oregon with Dan Lanning, and even their schedule, I think it was 119 strength of schedule coming in. We learned that, again, they still in the Big Ten. If I'm ranking Big Ten teams right now, I know Ohio State's number one in the country. They go on the road and get one at Washington. But who wants to play Oregon right now? And that league, when you look at it, Oregon, Ohio State, I think you should put Penn State in there still. But then after that, Illinois, are they legit? Indiana, I mean, that's a good football team. And then how about USC, the team that imploded the Big Ten, goes on the road to Champaign and gets beat by a team that got 60-something hung on the week before.
Yeah, another narrative that I'm not that eager to talk about anymore is Lincoln Riley. But what a moment. Come all the way back, tie the game, and then you let it go at the final moment against a team that was given up for dead. And Matt, at this point, Penn State will lose to Ohio State. I don't hear any dissent, and they're going to have a 10-2 record. And why in the world do they deserve to be in the playoff? They do not deserve to be in the playoff if they're 10-2, considering they would have I think they have Indiana on the schedule, so we'll give them half an effort. But the rest, I mean, their schedule is terrible. Even in the Big Ten, I think they have UCLA and Northwestern, and who knows who else or cares. So don't waste any time trying to convince me of that. And Southern Cal is just a typical 8-4 Lincoln Riley team. Who USC can't get rid of because the buyout is too oppressive.
And finally, one other game that I want to get to, it was kind of under the radar a little bit, A&M and Auburn. Auburn offensively, I was so high on Jackson Darnold coming into this season. That offensive line is brutal. And Texas A&M knew defensively that they had a better defensive front than Auburn had as an offensive line. They just stayed the course, and didn't need much offensively to get that win. And here's Mike Elko, 5-0 for the first time at A&M since 2016 when Kevin Sumlin was the head coach. And now they're just quietly hanging out, Paul, in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, they're not a perfect team, but their defense is really amazing. I say that every time I watch Ole Miss play, every time I watch Auburn play, they make another defense look elite. I mean, Hugh Freeze once had a reputation. Matt is an offensive genius. I think we can eliminate that from his bio now. I mean, that was one of the worst offensive performances I have ever seen. And I understand the frustration from Auburn fans from the week before about the Oklahoma game, but this one's on Hugh Freeze. You're the offensive wizard. Can you not call a better game than that?
Yeah, and that's it. That's coming off of the Oklahoma game, where that game he was sacked 10 times. You're like, what is going on? And then last night, or yesterday rather, just another disappointing game. Jackson Arnold again. I thought that they were going to come in and have a perfect marriage. It's anything but that. But you know what is a perfect marriage? College football Saturdays, Matt and Paul on a Sunday, and a weekend that was. We waited for it, we got it, and it delivered. For Paul Finebaum, at Matt Barrie, this is the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate. Next week, good. This week, great, but we're going to be here regardless on Sunday mornings.
You want this, you got that. No way, watch them walk right past you. Run fast while you have the chance. Don't speak